Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa, and today we are finally starting Big Art Quest April. This is Brigid, this is spring. It's been a little bit getting going. Even today it was a little bit getting going. On the mic is my husband John.
Hi guys.
He is going to be tracking me with our cameras and trying to keep this stream together during this live broadcast. I have everything set up to go today. If you're not familiar with the Big Art Quest and you're wondering what this is a very special year-long course that we're doing where we're doing really fabulous, fantastic fairy tales. You know, if you've done Big Art Quest 1 and you've done Big Art Quest 2, this is like exactly what you've been waiting for, but this may also just be the right class for you right now. You never know. You might need this wonderful fairy version of Brigid for your wall. If you check the description below, it'll link you to the traceable, correct?
Yep.
To the traceable on the website and more information and even an extra special quest on matching skin color that we did recently. I hope everybody is ready to get going. I feel like we should just jump on in and talk about what this is about. Oh, can you let me show me that camera again on the palette? All right, and how are we pictured? Okay, we're good. We're good. Okay. Just making sure you can see the color mixing. So looking at the palette, I'll tell you right now, we're starting out with, we have titanium white and zinc white. And I can always tell them apart because the zinc is so transparent you don't really see it on the finger at all. You can see the difference between those two whites. I have Indian yellow, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and phthalo green, and a little bit of glazing medium. Now this isn't the kind that just does glazing. This is a slow drying extender for acrylic colors. Sometimes mediums will say glazing, and what they actually are is a fast drying glazing additive. So you definitely want to read your bottle before you just buy that. This is the one that I like. That's just my preference. But there are good products out there all over the world. So let's talk about this design. We're April in, so we've done January, February, March, right? And as we've been going, the pieces have become more diverse from our reference photo. We have our picture-in-picture. This month I did something different. I went ahead and helped you kind of see the vision of where I was going. Before we've used the reference and said, this is something we're loosely following. We're using this for lighting. We're using this for placement and design. But we're going to take this even further. But this month, just to help everybody kind of understand, these are the kinds of changes that we're going to be making to the original reference, where we're really like pushing it further. And even beyond this, there'll be more flowers, there'll be more light, there'll be more reference. But I just wanted you guys to have something that didn't make such a big imaginative leap from where I was starting from. I think it's very important in design to recognize that reference photos are wonderful. Even going out and playing our painting and finding and doing studies, but these are the beginning of the painting journey, not the end. This is stuff that we can use as artists to take things even further. So let's do that now. I have, this is from the one that I free-handed, and then I give this to you guys as a traceable. I increased her size on a regular A1 sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, to 115%, you know, under the regular scale setting. Everybody's computer is different, but I just made her a little bit bigger so she'd fit my space on my 11 by 14 panel. This is a gesso panel. For acrylic painting, you could use canvas, you could use acrylic paper, whatever you want. I just happen to really be enjoying these ampersands that have come into my life. And I have underneath this a sheet of Serral transfer paper. I have a link to that in the description below, and I'm going to just go over the predominant lines here so I know where my object is, you know, in relationship to my canvas. This is really not about, like, again, being totally locked in to this part of the painting, but to recognize that we know where things are and how they shake out in our canvas. That's why we have this. And we're going to be doing the background today, and then we'll meet back up and continue forward. We usually do these in several sessions, about an hour long, so you guys have a chance to digest what we've done and be able to make it for yourselves. I think that's kind of best there. I'm going to be very general about this dress because we're going to really fairy up our dress. Right, and we've got to layer it into its environment and its landscape. I'm not going to go ahead and trace in my little glow lights because those are like the last thing that I put in. So I don't want to have to just transfer those in. It's always interesting working on a small face for me because like my vision has changed as time has gone by. So it's always fascinating. I usually have to get my glasses out or some type of loupe to work that out. But I'm just trying to, you know, get her basically placed in. So when I put in the trees and my landscape and everything, I know where she is. I'm not going to fuss too much on my wings because I'm going to put those in a little bit later. But because I want them to be luminous, I will sort of hold some of this space in white just so that it's very bright as I go. All right, so that's the thinking there. That's the traceable. Hopefully I did a good job of tracing her. We'll see. It's interesting, you know, what you've got to do. All right, so I've got her kind of basically in. She's real light. All right, so I'm going to kind of come over, and I don't want to lose her entirely. So I'm going to go over just a little bit, you know, in my pencils so that when I go to put her in later, I'm not completely lost. Because honestly, once you start laying in the paint, you lose a lot of what you sketch in. This is more like having a safety net under the tightrope than you guys might think. I started putting them into the lessons just so when people had a feeling or a barrier to drawing, they wouldn't stop their creative process. But again, once the acrylic paint is on, you're kind of still just freehand painting. It's interesting how that works, but sometimes this prevents us from feeling a little bit overwhelmed into our space. I'm going to just have that little hand here.
It's
Normally
very, very light.
I don't pencil sketch on my space, but I'm going to just a little bit today so I don't lose her.
It's very, very light.
Yeah, the yellow is very, very light. And on your canvas, leave it that light because you'll be able to see it. But, you know, this is a lot for cameras and everything to see. So once I have that in, then I can kind of talk about the way objects are shaking out on the canvas. Because we have even though we have this here, we still have a background, a middle ground, and a foreground. And we need to play with those spaces. And, you know, the photographer, of course, is limited by the natural landscape that's presented to them, which is quite magnificent. But we as artists are not limited by natural laws or landscape in any way. So we can definitely, you know, push things or take them further. And I think that's our goal for today. I've got her here. She's sort of in my middle foreground space. I'm going to put a little line here that lets me know as my forest is coming behind, because she's got a little path that she's walked through, but we don't really see it. She blocks a lot of that. And then what we've got to have to create is a halo of light right here coming down. Interestingly enough, she's one of the older fairy tale goddesses in the human lexicon of tales, and so she's an interesting subject to work from. There's a lot of directions you can take her. She just has done quite a lot in her time, in her mythology. Like, she even became an advocate for women's rights, like on her own. It's really interesting, the different evolutions that she's had as, you know, our cultures have changed, and we've gone through that. So I'm going to have to create a very nice central light here, and then kind of framing around here in a nice blend. So to do that, I'm going to come over to my palette, and I'm going to get, you know, one of my favorite scrumbly brushes. This is a number 8 Cambridge Bright. It's a mix of bristles and synthetic filaments, and I like that a lot of times. And I'm going to work my lightest space in first. I'm going to take a little of my green over to my Indian yellow, one of my very, very favorite colors. But listen, if you don't have Indian yellow, use what you have. It's still a yellow. It's more important that you get the value. That's how light or dark something is than the exact hue, which is the color that it is. So I'm adding quite a lot of Indian yellow, and I may just get a smidge of my burnt cyan in it to just gray it out just a touch. And then let's get our zinc. Look at that. Isn't that quite bright? So that's going to be bright enough, I think, for that to go around her. And we're just going to put that around her carefully. but not too precious because, again, we're going to have to just be painting her in. I'm going to work this little halo pretty much, you know, even around her hand. And I'll go right over places that I've drawn out because I know where they are now. It's more important that I know where the figure is. As I'm going, I'm going to just softly scumble this out. You can always get a little glazing medium if you need the edges not to dry on you so quickly. Again, this is the kind that is, I want to say it's Golden's glazing medium because most glazing medium actually just glazes. So it's Golden's happens to do both. It's an extender, it slows drying time, and it glazes. And I'm going to say just like blend this out. See how I'm almost like blending it out like a rouge or a makeup?
Yeah.
And I'm using this little back and forth motion to just push this out as I'm going. Nice little green space that she's in because it's very spring. And we've got to make this spring like using a bunch of different processes. Get a little more of my glazing medium on here and reload. So how is everybody doing today?
Really good. This is a, you know, I was just answering some questions there in chat as you were going along, because there were some folks who were asking, you know, this big art quest journey we're on really is to provide some more advanced skills, isn't it?
Yeah, this takes us just a little bit further. It lets me do some creative stuff as an artist.
Yeah.
But it also takes everybody a little bit further into those artistic concepts. We spend a lot more time as beginners than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And the wonderful thing about this is it starts to talk about the way that we use the world around us to inform our paintings. Right? We get to start discussing those interesting ideas. Get this nice little glaze. So I went through my Indian yellow, a touch of my burnt sand, a touch of my green, and I'm just trying to create this bright spring green background, even brighter than what I have in my reference. I'm going to push those elements and take them further.
Now, your art education isn't the only part of what makes you a painter.
Right.
It's also your daily painting practice and your experience, yeah?
Yeah. I think what makes you a painter is the act of painting.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of ways that we can give ourselves skills. I think art school's fantastic as a way to give yourself skill, but it's not the only way. Mm-hmm. Being self-taught is just as valuable, and you have access nowadays to just as much art information. No one's going to prevent me or you from buying, you know, an important art book. No one's going to stop you from working on your art practice in your studio. There's just literally nothing to stop you. This is art, and the rules or guidelines or boundaries or bumpers, but they're not the only way to get there. And every time some artist like breaks through a new wall, that's a new way for you to get there. I just saw someone who was doing the most extraordinary adaptive painting. They did paint with their mouth, and they had these special utility tools that allowed them to do that. And, you know, that's not something that, you know, you're going to get from art school.
That was inspiring to see, wasn't it?
That was inspiring to see, but it's also an important reminder to realize that there's not just one way. I've added a lot more of my zinc white to halo her a little bit more to get there. Right? There's not one way to paint a painting. There's a lot of ways to paint a painting. Right? You'll take a class with one instructor and they're going to have one set of things, and you know another instructor might have a different set of things that they think you should do. And really, at the end of the day, what you should be doing is keeping all the skills you find useful and valuable and effective for you, and practicing the skills you need to work on. Never turn your nose up at anything. That's my big advice for artists, is never turn your nose. I'm loading up a lot more phthalo green into my burnt sienna here, and I'll get a little Indian yellow into it, but it's just, you know, much darker. Yeah, never turn your nose up at anything. It doesn't serve you as an artist, really. And artists do it, and I always feel really bad for them when they do, because all they've done is limit their potential.
That's
right?
interesting.
You know, if you look at somebody and you go to like a craft fair in a local market and you see somebody painting, and you see like maybe toll painting, if you're an artist and you turn your nose up at that, you know, you're
Oh, yeah.
really limiting the skill sets that you would then have for your painting when you need it.
Yeah, I guess so. You could, because you can learn something from anyone.
Yeah. Look at that nice little blending that we're getting. We're creating this soft background is what we're working on. A very soft background. It's something that we're going to hang everything on. And this is going to be much brighter, again, than the background she's in, because we want to take this more into a new spring feeling, which is why I'm warming the colors up. If you were like, why are you doing that? That would be why.
Why are you doing that, Sherpa? We came here to learn.
That's right. I'm doing that because as the year's seasons change, it changes the nature of the light and the green. When you are in France, if you are lucky enough to live in France,
We come from France.
they have a different green than I have here in Texas.
They
Different
have
light.
French green.
French green. That spring green doesn't look the same as a Texas spring green. And Texas's summer green doesn't look like Texas's winter green. Doesn't look like Texas's spring green. It's just as the seasons change and they go through, the colors will change in the trees. And that's a lot about the way that they get light and care for themselves.
There's a true absinthe green you can only get in France.
Yeah. There really is. Or that's the place that we see it. You've traveled even more than I have, so you would really, really know.
It's true.
So I'm just continuing to use my glazing medium and this brush. Wonderful tools. You know, I got a little brown here, but see, that doesn't hurt me because then that's just that layer. It's just that depth that I've got to start building. If I don't get this out of focus created, the stuff that's in focus won't feel as important. And we're trying to make her feel very, very important, aren't we?
We don't want anyone to not feel important.
That's right. And we work this sort of blending central skill quite a lot with acrylic. We have to work a little harder for it than our friends over in oil. But I give them nothing.
The smooth, buttery blending of oil.
The smooth, buttery blending of oil. You know, each medium has its own potential. And don't let, medium rumors like put you off to a particular medium. Like oils are not toxic. It's thinners that are toxic. And it's terpenoids that are toxic. And there's lots of non-toxic options, which are not those. I would definitely, somebody brought up a good point to me about the odorless thinners. Don't get those because then you can't smell how sick you're getting.
Yeah. And while it's, fun to play teams like, I'm on watercolor team or I'm on team acrylic or oil, but all of them are art teams. And
they're all art teams.
Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. We're all on the same art team. Right? And there's just no point in ruling a thing out or discounting anything. I learn lessons from oil artists all the time and that help my acrylic practice, right? I learn lessons from encaustic painters or stained glass painters. There's a lesson with every single creative being that you engage with, even the ones that you don't like. That's a hard one. Like, I don't really like this person, but they're a really good artist, so I'm going to learn this lesson. You just like keep that mind open. So I'm just going to darken and continue to work this around here. Now, something I'm going to do is I'm going to move my canvas. And the reason that I'm going to move my canvas is so that I'm just rinsing my brush a little bit and I'm drawing it back off on a towel. When you're doing this type of painting method, the paint can dry on your brush as you work and make it less effective. But you do want to get the moisture out so it continues to be effective. So
effective brushing.
Huh?
We want to be an effective brusher.
We want to be an effective brusher. Yes, we do. Just
Like,
keep that going.
I guess the more artistic way of saying that would be painter.
Yes, painter. We're a painter.
I'm a brusher.
And where you hang in a gallery or the type of work that you choose to create isn't what makes you a painter. That isn't where that comes from.
Is it from the act of painting?
It's just from the act of painting. That's the only thing that can make you a painter is painting. Everything else is just the trappings. Sort
of like to be a fisherman, you have to go fishing.
Yes. Yes. No, I'm not throwing any stones at fantasy football players.
Well, they're fantasy footballing.
They're fantasy football. And you can fantasy art like that too. You can.
We have a miniature version of art that I play at.
That's right, our ATC club.
That's kind of like, I feel like that's fantasy football.
No, that is just that's just painting little tiny canvases.
It is.
That
It's
is just
tiny
art.
art. It's just little tiny art.
It's just little tiny art. That used to be one of my frustrations as an artist, is that
It's more like art pen pals.
small paintings aren't any easier to make.
No, they're not.
They just get sold for less money.
No, that's what I mean. Like, doing that's been a real lesson.
I love doing this type of background. It's very relaxing to me.
You're very scumbly there.
I am very scumbly there. I'm making soft edges, and I'm trying to soften everything as I go. You know, I'll be doing this by layers. It's good to have a brush that you can do this with. My cat's tongues do this really, really well, but then if you do that a lot, you can lose the edge on your cat's tongue. And then you need a second cat's tongue for your edge, and then you'll be like the rest of us artists where we have like 5 or 6 of the same brush, but it does like different jobs on the canvas, and we're like, no, that's my scumble brush.
Now, acrylic paint and the method by which we use acrylics is much harder on brushes than any other medium.
Well, can I say it? I'm going to shock everybody's mind.
What's that?
So even though my brushes were designed with acrylic paints in mind, my red-handled,
Yeah.
and you know, and there are brushes out there that'll go for acrylics, right?
Yeah.
The truth is there's no brush design that's actually for the way we paint with acrylics.
Wait,
All brush design is really for oils.
being that brush design happened like hundreds of years ago,
And
has it significantly changed?
Was
But
not for the way that, like, I mean, acrylics get up into your ferrule. Even if you wash them out really well, there's micro bits that will continue to build up that you have to scrape out. The soaps that we use are not made for acrylics. They're actually not. The everything about the design is not for that. So we are having to just, you know, we work with what we have. But acrylics are like that. They'll let us do it. It's just something to keep in mind when you're sitting there next to your oil painter who's like, I've had this brush for 10 years. Well, you know what? You're not going to do any, you can always recover an oil brush. You can recover acrylic brushes too. But the wear and tear is just different. I still have to keyhole this, and I have to keep pushing these little lights in this space. But I have a nice base here that I'm working from. So I'm going to sip my coffee. And can you guys kind of see how the keyholing has begun, and that we're going to continue to push and layer this out? We could have done a ground. We could have done an umber study, right? A tonal study. There's a lot of ways to do things. But for this painting, I felt like this was the best way to get through this for us to do. So, but if you have another way of doing it, I'm not going to like come into your studio and kick over your easel and be like, no, must do it this way.
umber studies. I think that has to be said in baritone.
What?
Umber studies.
Umber study. Speaking of, now I'm going to get my umber, right, into my wonderful phthalo green, my happy, happy green, one of my favorites. Just as a good behavioral green. I'll still add some Indian yellow to like warm it up a bit. And let's just come and work these edges. So you can see that there's this sort of, in this outer edge and then curved here, but not as much here down the corridor. This very deep value. And I'm going to work the toe of my brush, and I'm going to just work this in as well. I'm coming in, I'm going to pay attention in your reference, like how far in is this? You know, what's happening here? There we go. Because this is going to help our trees feel very, you know, the woods are lovely dark and deep. This is how they get lovely and dark and deep. Layers. Like ogres.
Now, I have to say, I love our chat and our community. It's really nice to be able to do our live. I wanted to say big art hugs and love to all of our community and moderators out here helping us out today. It's just been really, really nice. We're having a great day. So just a quick shout out and say thanks to everybody who makes it out here in the live.
I really appreciate that. I do. I appreciate everyone who shows up to help make this work, because this is a crazy show. This is a crazy idea. Nobody does this. I mean, you do this, but then you pay a lot of money to go to this workshop, and then you got to travel and do things. So it's out there, but it's not available in the way that we're doing it. And I was saying to John the other day that I'm so excited that I get to teach the kind of classes that I do.
Yeah.
So if you'll notice, I'm breaking up this space a little bit. And I'm softly even working this in here. This is going to build up my distant, far away little shapes that are supposed to be barely in my world. Barely. Say real soft too. Sometimes that'll help you paint soft if you talk soft. I think that helped Bob. Let's all talk like Bob. Everybody talk like Bob now. I'm gonna be real happy with my happy little fellow here. And everyone's like, yeah, but he was already done with the tree and the mountain and those 3 clouds.
Speaking of Sherpa speed, how many are we going to break this one across, do you think?
I'm going to try to break her across 4.
Yeah.
We may go a little bit into the next month. We might have her on her last day right before our next one. And that's okay. She takes as much. What we're going to do is we're going to give her the time she needs. You're going to have 12 paintings that will technically be a collection. You'll have a collection. So when people talk about I have a collection and they'll say I have to do a collection for my upcoming gallery show, you will also be like I have a collection on my walls. All a collection means is a series of paintings, generally more than 10, that are related in some considered narrative by the artist. That's what you're doing. So when you're putting together collections, you as an artist create a statement or story or a construction reason for your painting. I need to cool this with a little bit more of my burnt umber so it stays very dark. And in that, I'm going to move my canvas. What am I doing? And then you put them all together. So in this, like we've looked at these fairy tales. We picked from like lesser known. We didn't go for, the Disney fairy tales at all. We went for more of that Grimm's collective consciousness of man, our old stories, our forgotten stories, to be our inspiration. A little more burnt umber. I still feel like it's the darkest right here. If you're wondering why am I searching for this dark color, because it's the darkest right here. I'm going to take it right up to her dress.
Now, if I just had a quick question. If I think someone was just saying they ran out of burnt umber but had raw umber. Other than
you can add a little Here's what I would test. I will tend to add phthalo blue to my burnt umber to my raw umber to get my burnt umber. A lot of artists really like a little bit of Mars black, and I think it's really just about if you like the mixes that you get. I tend to like the ones that I get with a little bit of, I would demo it, but I don't have any raw umber in. But I like the mixes that I get with the phthalo blue, and it darkens it up chromatically. But some of my artist friends hate it, and not in a small way, like in a very big opinionated way. Where you're like, wow, those are such strong feelings about a color mix, but they're like, no, I hate it. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
But you can try it out.
You can try it out. What I would do whenever you're trying to experiment with a mix, if you're like, man, I don't have this paint. This happens to all of us artists. It's a skill you've got to have. What do you do when you don't have a paint in your paint box? What do you do if you don't have a color in your paint box? Well, you've got to figure out how to make do, don't you? You got to do the Tim Gunn. You got to make it work. Are you making it work this week? I don't have that yellow. That's fine. I have another yellow. Right? I'll make that work. Make it work. That's an artist job. You make it work.
And can you explain the toe of your brush there?
I can. So in my brush, I have the ferrule, I have the heel, and I have the toe. And everything between the heel and the toe is the bristle, filament, or hair that I'm using to paint with. We don't really have hair in acrylic painting. Hair would not hold up. You can have hair in watercolor and you can have hair in oil, but you pretty much have to have bristles or synthetic filament. This is the perfect marriage of both worlds, in my opinion. I'm just phthalo green and and burnt umber. Just still making sure I want to really darken these corners and still continue to kind of randomly put in darkness down here, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm randomly putting it in and trying not to make patterns. I don't want it to be an even uniform color of paint. I used to say Home Depot colors, but then somebody thought I was saying that Home Depot didn't make great paint, which they do, but what they're known for is not making painterly paint, because you wouldn't want painterly paint on your walls. You would want perfectly mixed, completely integrated color, right?
Yeah, nice even smooth coverage.
So if you've ever heard me say Home Depot paint, what I actually mean is that even smoothness of coverage and color, which is not what I'm going for here as a painter. Though there are some artists that are very meticulous, especially in oils, and they will only palette mix colors. They won't brush mix colors at all, because they feel like their brush could get contaminated with an unexpected color. I'm going to take this darkness up here and edge out this corner as well. So they just don't like that unexpected little edge of color. It makes them real mad. Like, and I literally mean mad. Their response is anger. Yep. You'll hear them like scream from their little studio, ah! And you're like, oh, they got color they didn't want.
Right, now right there, I've got a good shot of you. Can you demonstrate and walk through the scumbling process?
So what I'm doing is I'm using the toe of my brush and I'm pressing in along this corner. See, I got the corner pressed in. And I'm wiggle the brush. Wiggle the brush. Yeah, I'm getting these nice little patterns. And they feel plant-like almost, don't they?
Yeah.
And I'm going to take a little of this right here because there's this sort of dark bank about this space on the canvas. Look. And it makes like, it's so cool. It makes like a distant little bushy thing. I'm not saying it's Bob cool, but it's pretty cool. Distant little out of focus bush, right? And you've got to kind of, notice these moments in your canvas, like where is it like unexpectedly dark? How do we build that up? Because if it's not there, the rest of the painting won't hang. All right, how are we doing? So you look at it and you're like, oh, is it getting all moody? Right? You want her to be moody. Definitely moody. So I'm hoping you guys are enjoying this really crazy adventure. I'm committed to the 12 paintings. I think Oya is the one I'm going to change the least, and honestly, because that reference was just perfect, I couldn't have imagined anything better in my head. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's just perfect. Perfect. But in general, like, everything needs a little tweaking. Everything needs a little help. And again, photographs of an environment don't remotely look like like they would in nature. All right, let's really. So we know up here we've got some light and stuff that's going to be coming down. It comes down in this little kind of corner and everything around her, and we've got to work that out. So I'm going to pull this out, and I might go ahead and get some of my phthalo into my mix. Like you do. Okay, so I'm going to do a crazy thing. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to take a little of my green and a little of my phthalo, and that's going to give me this sort of turquoise color. Go ahead and smidge a little of your burnt sienna into it, and you can still get a little of your green in there. Let's see what we're pulling out. Is it still too bright? I think it is. Let's get the burnt umber in there. Oh, there we go. But I need it to be much lighter. Right? A little blue. I'm looking for a cool mint, but that's still quite warm. Is more spring than end of summer. So I've got a lot of pigment on my brush, and I'm going to need to make a very light color. Since I used it to mix, I'll have to rinse out. Now, two things you could do with that. If you're really on a budget, you find another place for the color in your canvas. If you're not on a budget, you can rinse out. And that's really how that works. Oh, there we go. See that color right there?
Yep.
Very, very light. Very, very light. And is coming from up here. So here we go. But we have this bright glow underneath. So we're going to have just a little more of the color. And we're going to get some of the luminosity that maybe a lot of early beginning acrylic painters don't know that they can get. The zinc is very transparent and does not overly tint my color. It'll lighten it, it'll do it, but it doesn't do it to the degree that is so much that titanium white can do. And that way, when we really lighten in a strong way, right? Whoa. So see how we're really, really pulling that in now?
Yeah.
Let's see if can we see our value up. Wow, it doesn't really show on the big screen at all. That's so disturbing.
What's that?
That the lightning doesn't show on my big screen at all.
The lighting?
The lightning of the
Oh, yeah, it
painting.
does. Yeah.
You can see it on the quarter camera, but I can't see it on my computer screen because it's so blown out by lights.
Your glare.
Yeah. So I'm blending this in here because I don't want it to be an even pattern, and I don't want an even pattern above her. Now I've got a little bit of this glazing around her. I'm going to come in with just a smidge of my titanium white into this green. Right, but you can see it's much stronger. Look how strong that is. And then when we put it on the canvas, we have to be much more careful to keep the lines soft.
Now, Sherry was asking, can you use a synthetic or a natural bristle, or does it have to be a blend?
You can use, so my cat's tongues will do it, right? Because you can work this side, so I can come here and I can get this wet and drag off the extra water and load up. And I can also just very softly do this as well on the side of my brush, right? The ruby satins will do it on their corners. You know, any synthetic that you scumble with, it will kind of change the way the edge of the bristles is. You've got to have a scumble brush, so what I would say is, as an artist, you just have to decide, what do I like to scumble with? That's really just where you're at. Where do I want to scumble with, and where's my edge at? And you have to keep some detail brushes only for detail work, right? You just keep some brushes for the job that they do. So you can do it with a, see how we're doing it with another brush?
So it would be okay to use either a bristle or a synthetic.
It is. It's just understanding, you know, make sure you've got the stroke. Make sure you've got the technique. If you've got it, you've got it. Don't stress on it. I will keep going with what I have, but just wanted to show you that I could do that. Be like, hey, I can do this.
No.
And a little bit of that, and here, and just a little more brown. There we go. There we go. And get the white into it. So see, I find it. You got to find it sometimes.
Now, is there a good way to know when it's a good time to do a solid background versus a keyhole background?
Well, you just want to look at what's going on in your painting, right?
Yeah.
And, you ask yourself, like, sometimes, trying to figure out how to verbalize this, because there's a bunch of decisions that you make as an artist. This is a slightly darker color now, so I'm just moving it outward. Right? If you get a great mix, but it's darker than what you want, see if you see it in your space, and if you do, then you just mix that outward. And I'll put some over here. So So it just went a little more bright turquoise than I had wanted. That's okay, because I needed something somewhere, so that's what I do. So when you're looking at it, you've got to ask yourself, how am I going to build this? You know, where does this build come from? How is this going to be? You know, get a little more warmed up. And just slightly going over here. So sometimes I'll look at it and I'll go, well, this is a very simple kind of almost abstract background. I'm probably more likely to use an acrylic ground. You know, but if I'm like, this is a very complicated set of woods and I want to ask myself, how am I going to get to my result the easiest? You know, what takes out a layer of paint I don't have to make? And I'll take notes like as I'm designing and see if I can even really come into verbalizing that thinking process. Why I might choose one, you know, on one beach scene and another on a different beach scene. You know, what was I looking at? And I try to show you some different methodologies. See how she's doing. Okay, so you can see her lightening up now.
Oh yeah.
Really get a little of my Indian yellow into this white. And try to hit even a shade up. Come right here with this at the top. Work this down just a smidge. You know, and I want to just make sure that there's bits of a lighter color coming down a couple places. So you'll notice I'll just see how I'm softening this out. This is a bit like clouds in a sense, isn't it? How do we get those kind of backgrounds? And come around her a little bit. So I feel like I'm going to come around with a little bit of my Indian yellow and my white all into that mix, so it's a little integrated, right? Very light. Come around here. Because she's going to have a little bit of her own light. And I'm going to want to, see I'm on just the toe to soften that? It's almost like pastels. So it's nice to have her in. I got asked earlier, like, will I sketch her in and will I put her on later? It's hard to know where to put her halo until I see her.
Right.
You know, how do you know where her halo would be until you see her? Well, you got to put her in. If ever you get too much paint on your brush, find a place on the canvas to put it or take it off the brush. These are the choices that you get. And I don't want a lot of it, and I don't want it to be a hard halo. I want the halo to be there and perceptible around this figure. I mean, it'd be tough to have the you know, she's the sun, she's spring, she's motherhood, she's hearth and home. I mean, like, justice for women. There's so much going on here. Like, the Irish took her everywhere, right? Somebody posted like a great article about it. I was like, man, the Irish got Brigid everywhere. Just everywhere. She was like in everything. She was like the Forrest Gump of the God Pantheon. She was just in everything that you never knew that she was in. So I'm just keeping that warm. And that's how I'm getting like that halo effect, but I'm still mixing it into that base green that I had on my brush. And that's why I've kind of avoided washing the brush, just so that I have that kind of pigment happening in here.
Now, how far are we going to go into this today?
About what time are we?
We're about 45 minutes in.
We'll go on like another 15 minutes, and then we will break and meet back up again, because that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's why these don't end up being like these one little 1 hour things that I do on YouTube. It's like, oh, well, we're going to be at it a minute, so...
Now, before we go, I think it was Ruth and Marty and a couple other people were asking, how is the studio rebuild going?
Well, actually pretty good.
There's a pile of stuff over here.
Now there's stuff inside from outside, and the good news is the new pieces fit. Because as you may or may not know, John is constructing the walls and everything, and the set pieces and all of that himself. And so there was an interesting bit of the journey. On the first walls were a little bit big.
Well, they were built to stage specs.
Yep, which is too big.
Which is a foot too big for this room.
It's too big.
But it proved that we could make them.
It did.
And now we have an excellent table that's 8 foot long.
You do. It's really kind of cool. I'm going to get back into the mix of the burnt umber and but now I'm adding the phthalo blue to it. So you can kind of see that here. Right, we're getting that sort of here. And I'm going to get a little bit of my zinc and pull that out and see how bright it is. See how bright that is?
Mm-hmm.
To make that less bright, if I take a little burnt sienna into it, look how it kind of grays it out. Because we don't want it to go too bright. There we go. Add a little bit of my Indian yellow. Let's put some distant little, since we've got the time today. So see how I'm just tapping these in? These are little palm fronds or something. And they're so light. Can you see how light they are? The trick to this is soft marks, light marks.
It's background forest.
Background forest is a very important part of your forest here. Just soft. Come across here, like right over here. Just in the toe, barely touching. And this is where you're going to like win. This is the technique to practice for this. I think a lot of people thought I was going to take out the like forest bits, but I'm like, no way, man. Definitely doing these. It's not my favorite. Right,
there was a Sherpa.
Yeah, we all have them, right? As artists,
Yeah,
we all have these little moments where like, how am I going to get that space? How am I going to?
It was the Muppet sound that Sherpa makes.
Yeah, I do make a Muppet sound. Known to happen. I want to thank everybody for the help about my sayings too for the stamp set, because like I really couldn't come up with anything, and I was like, what am I going to do?
Oh, those are so good. Sherpisms.
Sherpisms.
Actually, it was our own Alan, who helped us start that with his little soapbox.
Yeah, that was so cool. So see, these are very distant little plant-like shapes, aren't they? And how do I know what to do? Well, I'm looking at these and I'm saying, how can I say this maybe in a way that's respectful to the subject, to the forest, right? Because you got to respect your subjects or you can't paint them. But I guess that's not true. I feel like that's true, but I'm sure that's not true. I bet somebody is totally disrespectful of their subjects and still paints them and is just sitting there going, that's not true. I do that every Tuesday. But I'm just wanting to show some of these distant little bits here so that we know that this has happened. It needs to be super soft. If at any point you lose the softness, you just go grab some zinc onto your brush. And you can always, look, you can always come back and soften it. What's important is that this be soft and far, far away, all towards her. How are we doing?
Oh,
you know what? I'm going to get this background into a certain point and then we'll just stop. And it is what it is.
Okay. Well, we're at 50 minutes right now.
Okay. We might go over a titch. Just getting in some softness. Because I want to take advantage of where we're at. We've got our paint out. And we have to create these soft bits in. I know it's harder than what we usually do. But one of the things I think is that there's really nothing. I'm not going to take it past this midpoint in her legs. There's nothing we've got going on that's so hard. Oh, look at that. Doesn't that all broken up and dappled now? There's nothing that's so hard that we can't figure it out. Now I've got my green and my burnt. See, and I'm going a little more brown this time. A little bit of my zinc in there because I don't, if I put my white, it would be just so much, and I don't want it to be so much because I want to be able to put this in this space here. Just a few of these bits that are darker. See how they're just a little bit darker? And they're coming in different spots maybe, and they're not encroaching as much. We'll have to put in some light branches. We're just talking about these distant bits of things. Could be happening. Oh, let's go light, 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 light. It could be right there, but we're not sure because they're so soft. And we don't want to take out all of our good light bits, do we?
No.
No, we need those light bits because they tell us some important stuff. And just take them out, though. Don't take them out. Come over this side. Same thing. Just a bit lighter. And I'm looking at the pine trees. I'm looking at these pines. Now, I think I probably want to somewhere in here get in maybe some dogwood, which feels like very spring to me. You know, I'm going to want to put in, I mean, I've got my front flowers in the reference, but chances are somewhere here there's going to be some foxglove. So just putting in little branchy shapes. See the little wiggles? They're just soft. And if John can get on there, it's not like, it's the sum of their parts that make them feel branchy. So once you've kind of gotten your, oh, that's kind of branch-like, then and you come in and you put this in, you'll find that getting quite dark and loaded up.
Now, which brush are you using there?
This is still, I think I've been the whole time my number 8 bright on my Cambridge.
Oh, so it's a Cambridge.
Yeah.
I knew it was a green one, but I didn't know other than that which one it was.
Yeah.
Number 8 Cambridge.
Yeah. It's just a good one for this. There's lots of good ones. Right? There's lots and lots of good ones. And I'm just making sure that we've got some definition that's happening here. Now, there's a thing left that we can do that's going to make a big, big difference. And I'm going to see if I could pull it off.
What can you put? What are you
We're
going to do?
grab our round, our number 4 round. I'm going to use my TheArtSherpa round, number 4. And I'm going to get my burnt umber and a little bit of my green, but mostly my burnt umber and a lot of my white because it needs to show but be pretty light or this won't work.
So you have 6 minutes till the top of the hour.
Okay, okay.
No, just letting you know.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to talk about some distant soft branches that could be back here. Right? Not too many, not too much. Right? But I've got to talk, like there's so much happening behind her. And I want to be able to express that, you know, in the distance. And that's going to be about how light can I get that mix. I need it to be quite light, but still feel like branchy. All right, there we go. I just had to lighten it like even a shade. So this is more challenging, but it's an important thing that has to go in on this stage. It is a little more. So I'm trying to find something that's going to just come up on the background a little bit, but oh, there it is. But not so much that it pulls forward.
Oh, it's very light.
Yeah, it's very light.
I'm going to go over and look at that again. It's super light.
Let's get this kind of worked back. There we go. These are light marks. These are not, you know, big, heavy, heavy marks. You need to see that they're happening here. All right, I'm going to come over her. But she's got, you know, a lot of forest behind her, doesn't she?
Yeah, Sarah thinks this is turning into quite a magical forest.
This will be a super magical forest. All things foresty will be magical coming up just on the channel, just in general. Be ready. So I'm not going into the plants too much behind me because there'll be things that are more focal in front of them. I'm just making sure I've got a nice line that I can follow.
They're background plants.
Well, they are, right?
They,
And so I'm just looking for exactly what I need to talk about a branch that might be in the distance coming up. And I'll go behind a wing or whatever because... And I'm dipping in water. I'm trying to improve the flow of my paint. Heavy body paint, sometimes it's wonderful stuff, but it can have a little trouble flowing off the brush. And so you want to like adjust for that. And I'm just keeping these nice and long. Just a few of them here and there. How are we doing? We have a few branches. See, there's some branches behind
they look
her now.
really good.
And we need those. That was part of this look. She's not, you know, in the manicured woods. She's in the woods.
If there aren't magical branches, you can't have magical squirrels.
Very true.
And I think that's where the brownies hang out. On the branches.
Well, I thought brownies were ground dwellers.
You know, it's been high school since I read the giant book of fairies. And it was like this huge book. It was like an encyclopedia, and it had like a big section on brownies. And I remember reading about it, but I don't...
Do we all love that we just made Brian Froud totally in charge of all like fairy lore? We're like, yes, he knows. That guy.
I don't think this was a Brian Froud book.
Really?
No, it was. I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
Huh.
It was another, but you know.
Right, how are we doing? So we're doing pretty good now. We've got some distant branches that are happening. So the trick will be enough branches, but not too many branches when you're painting. And you're going to want to carry them back enough that you're going to be able to blend them into another layer of foliage. Right? And I like to cross them in front of each other. And they're just light and they're just airy. Right? They're just a little bit that's there. And here's the thing, we're going to get a little bit of this color and just the smidge. We're going to make our little color again. Alright, there we go. Let's see, hopefully it's not too... I think she's pretty muted. Now we'll just put a few more bits of this sort of like there's leaves and things afoot here. Just a couple places. If you go crazy, it's just going to be a big fuzzy mess. So see, I've got them a little bit here. I pick spots that, so that helps layer these, right? We're layering these into the space. And now I'm going to get right into my, I haven't even rinsed my brush. I'm just going to get right into my green and my brown. Let's make sure that these branches are sort of blended into wherever they came from. See how we're doing that? We're softening where they came from. See how we are? This slightly darker line, which is still quite soft. This is not a small feat, but it's a fun feat. This isn't something good to like rush through either. You gotta take your time and find your space. So now I feel like we've got a little bit happening there. And hopefully it's soft enough. So then when we put the brighter stuff in front of it, it pushes it back. I'm worried that these took on too much of a pattern, and if that gets to be true, what I can do is I can come in and get my light again going and see if I can't push some of it back. As we come up through. I don't want to take it out though. Just want to layer and lighten it up. Just softly. Are we getting a corridor of light, John?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is great.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Let's see how the corridor of light looks. All right, so it's bright, corridor of light. We can meet up again and take it up at the next section.
All right.
All right, so just get her here. Your things to practice are softening your lines, getting your little micro mixes, working with, this is such a green on green on green piece. This is a great opportunity for you to work on your values and how warming and cooling a color. And just remember this, warm colors. That's anything that leans towards the yellow and orange and red. Pull forward on the canvas. Cool colors, which is the cool, like the greens, the blues, and the purples, push back. So like as you're cooling a color or warming it up, it's gonna come forward. Like if I put a lot of burnt sienna on those branches, they'd be more forward. If I put a bunch of blue and umber in them, they pull back. The bias of color. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at the easel really soon. Bye-bye.